The time has finally come. Persona 5 Strikers is now out worldwide and is no longer stuck in Asia. Everyone around the world is able to play it, whether it be on PlayStation 4, 5, Nintendo Switch, or on PC. And I, for one, couldn't be happier. So, before I get into this review, a little bit of context. I mainly played the game on my PlayStation 5. I have a complete playthrough on PlayStation 4, and I've gotten about 15 to 20 hours on the Nintendo Switch version just for kind of comparison's sake. So just a heads up, all of the footage in this review is going to be taken from the PlayStation 4 version running on PlayStation 5. So, Persona 5 Strikers. Obviously, it is something I've been very, very excited about. I'm a huge fan of not only Koei Tecmo, but specifically Omega Force. Omega Force has had tons of different intellectual properties they've worked on over the years, ranging from anime to other game properties, and when I first initially heard that Persona 5 Strikers was going to be coming out, I was very excited, expecting it to be pretty safe by the numbers. And when I ended up finally getting my hands on not only the demo back in 2020, but then the full game over the next couple of months, it was really clear to me that this is really Omega Force's love letter to a franchise that they are very passionate about. And while you can say that they obviously have a lot of passion for the different series they work on, this one to me felt very special, not only because it was a collaborative effort between Atlus and Koei Tecmo, but this one definitely throughout its entire production, not only in terms of how much time they took. This is a game that took over 3 years to make happen, from a studio who's known for pumping out games pretty fast. This is something that involved so many hands on deck, not only from the original Atlus team, but just from people at Koei Tecmo who really, really wanted to make this something special. And I'm here to say that Persona 5 Strikers, playing through it in Japanese, was such a blast. It never felt old to me last year. And then going into the English version in 2021 was even more of an awesome experience. I was going into it thinking, okay, I've played this game before in Japanese. I've played through it hours upon hours upon hours. I've talked about it for so much time. How's the English version going to hit me? And the fact that it felt not only like a fresh, brand new experience finally playing it with the English voice cast, with everything like just sort of being there from the get-go, even knowing what was going to happen in terms of major story beats, it was still an incredible 50-hour playthrough for my first run. So I really want to start off with, after going through a little bit of history there, I want to talk about the story. Now, without getting into too much spoilers, one of the things I love the most about Persona 5 Strikers is that it nails the tone. And the story beats aren't really what I want to praise as much as the consistency in the writing. One of my biggest complaints with something like Persona 5 Royal is that while Persona 5 Royal has very, very good sections in its story, mostly towards the end in terms of the new content, a lot of it feels very inconsistent. You can tell that the people who were writing Persona 5 Royal's new content were not the people who wrote the original story in Persona 5. It definitely felt like a kind of uneven mixture of different tones, characters, and whatnot. Now, Persona 5 Strikers has a couple of things in its advantage. One, it was written by one team, and two, it is a sequel with all of the cast and characters of the Phantom Thieves all getting along. There's no reintroduction of Ryuji, Morgana, Ann, Makoto, Haru, or anybody else there. The cast of characters know each other. That relationship has already happened. They've bonded. They've had their coming of age happen. So this really lets the story kind of flex the character skills of each one of the cast members in a way that I really appreciated. It felt very kind of natural, all the ways that they have either acted differently, might be sort of acting now as time has passed, because Persona 5 Strikers is a sequel in not the most official terms, but really in the sense of, hey, it takes place after the ending of Persona 5, so everyone is a little bit older, some people have now graduated high school, we're seeing where these characters are at, and we're spending the summer vacation with them as you come back to town. Now, what I find really interesting is, and I don't normally talk about this in my reviews, but I'm really amazed by how much I'm seeing people talk about Persona 5 Strikers just being Persona 5 again. It's just, oh, they're taking the themes of Persona 5 and just copying and pasting it into Strikers, and it just feels so long, and it just feels like I've been there before, and blah, blah, blah. And for me, I never had that feeling at all. Like, looking into the themes, how they connect from the first game to Strikers, it's like, yes, okay, On is relating to Alice, the first jailkeeper boss, because they both have different aspirations, but they're still coming from a world of, I'm misunderstood, I'm getting into the modeling industry for X or Y reason, and they bond in those cases like that. But even other characters, like, I think each one of the major bosses is really interesting for different reasons. I especially loved the connection Natsume and Yusuke had, not necessarily in terms of how they interacted with each other, but most in the way of how personal it becomes to Yusuke, because even just that tiny moment of being at a club and overhearing... Even just that tiny moment of overhearing Natsume call the Sayuri trash, just really sparking something within Yusuke that's not just unbridled rage, but is the fact that he takes that really, really personally. And not only because it's something his mother made and that is very sentimental to him, but he knows what it means to be an artist, not just creatively in terms of painting stuff, but whether you're a writer, whether you're someone who wants to use their skills and contribute to society. That is not an easy path, and I think it's really interesting that it'd be very easy to pigeonhole that whole arc of, oh, I hate him because he trashed my mom's painting. But no, Yusuke's coming at it from an artist to an artist and trying to really make sure that he's not just giving up at the end. And that's also one of the things I really loved. Of the resolution you see with a lot of these feel very natural. They don't feel forced. It's always, hey, what you did was wrong, even though you're not the major bad guy here, even though you're not the culprit. You need to know that what you did is wrong, and I want you to make sure that your life going forward is better, which is way, way, way better than almost any of the endings the normal people saw in Persona 5. It's just like, you're bad, go to jail. You're bad, go to jail. You're bad, someone kills you. So having that sort of breakout was so nice. The third jailkeeper, not to go through all of these, but another one that really struck me was initially the relationship you see with the third jailkeeper, knowing Haru is a little girl. It doesn't really hit you as much until you really finish that story and see why this mayor was such a pivotal part of not only Haru's life, but also what it really means to be overwhelmed with stress, working in the government, trying to make everyone happy, while trying not to let other people, like, rule over the city and have corruption go all over the place. And I really like different trends like that. One of my favorite moments in the third jail was really, like, that moment right before you're about to leave, and the jailkeeper talks to the mother of the child she was responsible for killing, or somewhat loosely responsible for it, and the mother has such a thing of, no, you can't give up. And it has that moment of, like, if anyone in the world has the right to hate this woman, it's the mother of the child who's been killed because of an accident she was loosely responsible for. And so, like, having these deep character moments are really nice, and even if the story seems like it's dragging or going long for it, I never felt bored. Like, when I would have a moment of when I beat a boss in a jail, or in that opening scene of just like, I'm cool, let's put the game on auto mode and just get like a snack and watch this like a movie. Because I'm honest here, with all of the story beats in Persona 5 Strikers, I enjoyed watching those infinitely more than the entire series run of Persona 5 the animation. And that was way more of a visual, like, kind of spectacle of like, hey, we're showing you this story, we're truncating things, we're making this as cinematic as humanly possible. And just watching these in-game character models meant way more to me in Strikers than any other, like, story was ever told in Persona 5 the animation. So, going into, like, ending my story, though, I really, really appreciate where every aspect's kind of going for it in terms of overall story themes, talking about why the bad guy's doing what they're doing. Like, if I had to say one thing that really does kind of disappoint me in the tiniest of aspects, I think the final villain reveal is far from surprising. I think they could have done a little bit of a better job foreshadowing it, but I mostly put that to blame because I enjoyed all of the other villains so well, because they all felt so realized and so well developed in a way that made sense. Like, even though there is an equivalent of the SIU director in this story, his existence makes sense at least. He's never a major bad guy you have to, like, personally deal with. And everyone else involving with the jails and the systems around it were so interesting that having the last one be a surprise twist that I saw coming a million miles away really doesn't bother me. It just shows how hard it is to have that consistent, like, wow factor while also not, like, spoiling your own surprise in terms of storytelling. So I think realistically, it's not something that's going to ruin anyone's experience if you look back at the experience of all the other villains as highly as I do. One other thing I would like to say about the story, thank God this does not suffer from bad new character writing or bad new character introductions. If there's one thing Atlus has a really, really rocky track record of, is having new characters added to games or casts and having them fit well. Because you gotta think, for every Show Minazuki or every Labrys, you're going to have characters like Alex from SMT Strange Journey Redux, and they're so hard to fit in. And even characters that I like Ren from Catherine Fullbody, it never feels like natural. It always feels like, oh, here's the Scrappy-Doo of the cast. It's just a new character because we have to show you a new character to give this value, I guess. And so this game having two major new Phantom Thieves, both being so good, and both being not only some of my favorite characters to play, but some of my favorite story arcs, was so much fun. So for starters, let's go with Sophie. So Sophie is initially revealed to you very early on. She's a red-haired AI companion who is basically living in your phone and is able to kind of come to life in the metaverse and help join the Phantom Thieves and be an active party member in that sense. And Emma, I just think she's like junk food in the best sort of way. She is lighthearted, she is fun, she is funny, she never takes things too seriously without it not making sense. She gets along well with most of the cast. I think they don't really do an even amount of screen time with her, but it's kind of hard when she's stuck on another character's phone. I thought her writing was fun. I thought her voice acting, it was great in English and Japanese. I really, really enjoyed my time with her. I thought her ending actually made a lot of sense. Honestly, my biggest complaint with her is I think her persona design is really funny, but when your whole motif is you're stuck in a box, literally, it's kind of hard to really get out of that without it looking silly. And I think the Awakened form, it's not bad. It's just one of those things that it's just so funny to me of yeah, I guess that's what you would have to do if you're a box. So Sophie, really, really liked it. Have no major complaints. Super fun character, but not anything you're going to be thinking about for years and years to come. People are not going to, at least I assume, people I don't think are going to be looking back at, deep philosophical questions brought up by Sophie's character art. It is, I am basically a newborn baby coming into this world, teach me about humanity, and I want to hopefully make humanity better in the process. Super wholesome, super fun, no harm, no foul for me. Now, the big Mac Daddy, I'm gonna super simp for Bloodborne Wolf Daddy, Zenkichi. Oh my god, I loved Zenkichi in Japanese so much that I was like, whoever gets this role, you gotta be careful in English. Zenkichi was such a slam dunk of a character in a way I never expected. Through all of the marketing really beforehand, even though we knew he was going to be a playable Phantom Thief, all the marketing beforehand was okay, he's going to be the hard-boiled cop who has to join you guys for some reason, and I guess through situations that are happening, you overcome your differences and you work together and hold hands and everyone's cool, and then at the end of the day, he's like, you darn whippersnappers, I'm not Persona-ing ever again. But thank God, that is not the case. For starters, Tom Taylorson, who is the English voice actor, you did an amazing job. I don't know if you're ever going to hear this. You were easily my favorite person in the entire cast. I want an entire game just voiced by you. That is just all of your characters. Give me Octodad eating a bunger, hanging out with Zenkichi. I'll die a happy man, I promise. But Zenkichi in the story in English is so good, and in Japanese as well. The Japanese voice actor absolutely killed it. But what I love about Zenkichi is he is just such a weird dichotomy and mixture of characters that I've seen before, but it just hits so differently in the context and the way he's used. So Zenkichi initially brought into the story is, I'm part of this case, I've been following you guys. Right now, the Phantom Thieves are the head suspects for this case of people being influenced by the metaverse. What's going on? People immediately just thinking, okay, the Phantom Thieves must be guilty. So it's his job to track them down, get evidence, and see what's going on. But Zenkichi, being the good guy cop that he is, he knows who the Phantom Thieves are, even just through watching them for a couple of days. He's like, hey, you're a bunch of knuckleheads, but I know you wouldn't be doing this, and if you were, you wouldn't be as bad about this as you are now. So Zenkichi kind of strikes a deal with them. He says, hey, I'll help keep the cops off your back if you guys help me in the process. And what initially starts as basically blackmail, and they're very upfront about it. They're like, hey, we don't really like the cops, but like if you're gonna give us a better chance of sort of figuring out this mystery and going on out there and giving us leads, there's definitely a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours there. It's definitely a lot more even than like him abusing his powers as an evil adult cop or whatever. So I really like Zenkichi starts the relationship on like what should be a sour note, but never really feels like it. And his character progression through each city as you're traveling over Japan to check out all these different jails and figure out the mystery of why all these new palaces are popping up is so fun, because it feels so natural. Of like, he's got a lot of walls up at first. He's not really like wanting to open up to you. You guys are suspects in a criminal case that he's actively in, and he's trying to look good. He wants his boss to see that he's doing a good job. But you can see even through the surface that he's like covering, he's got problems. He's got a lot of things going on in his head. But he's at the same time, while he does take his job very seriously, he also is kind of silly. He has moments of like goofing around with them that make sense. They feel natural. They're very human moments. And nothing gets more human, I think, until you meet his daughter. When you meet Zenkichi's daughter, there's a really great moment of seeing how he takes his job so seriously, but he's not just that stereotypical, I'm the dad, I gotta work, all I can do is work, even though my wife is dead and my daughter has no mom, I gotta work all the time. You see that the reason he's got his head so serious about all these cases is because the position that his job has put him in is almost kind of like led him to being unable to fulfill the mystery of his wife's murder. And thankfully those stories are tied up. You do get a very conclusive ending with it. And it's great because you have those moments of him opening up not only to everyone else but his daughter, and having those moments of levity. And one of my favorite moments in the entire game is Zenkichi's awakening scene is so great. Like, for me, it's that perfect moment of he has to come save the day. The Phantom Thieves cannot help him. This is very integrally tied to his daughter. And this moment of just unbridled rage, not only at the situation he's in, but at himself. And it's one of those great awakenings you don't always get of, oh man, I'm messing up. I gotta stop ignoring my shadow self. It's like, no, he's got so many reasons in his life to just be a shut up, do your job police officer. But he eventually breaks through his chains and liberates himself in an awesome, awesome, awesome awakening scene that I cannot stop praising enough. Zenkichi's story is amazing, his character is amazing, his awakening's amazing, and his outfit is so over the top. If I ever see someone cosplayed in real life, they immediately just get a high five. It's just that impressive. Alright, so going a little bit more into the gameplay. So, as a lot of people are going to assume, or say, or just come up with other assumptions, even though this is a game made by Omega Force, this is not a hack and slash. This is not, I'm running around mindlessly in battles, takes no skill, mash a bunch of buttons, pretend like I'm doing good, I'm never gonna die, 20 hours go by, and then the experience is done. The team behind this has done such a great job of melding stealth, action, platforming, in a way that, like, the gameplay is so unlike anything Persona 5, and unlike anything, really, Omega Force has done, but is a blend of all of them. It wonderfully encapsulates using skills, using personas, using different party members in a way that feels naturally, using long distance, using up-close combat. All these ways that the combat just works complement each other so well that I never got tired of playing anybody. I love playing as everybody. Even if it's a character I don't super love, it's just so fun seeing how they all act differently. Joker, obviously being the wild card, he's very easy of, I can collect, fuse, and use multiple personas, I can switch on the fly. He's got tons of options at his disposal and has the most skills available at any moment, so he's very versatile, and he's always just your lead as the protagonist. But like Ryuji, really heavy, great at charge attacks, has an awesome A+ level shotgun with an equally awesome charge shotgun attack. On very fast and very sporadic. Her fire attacks infusing with each of them is a really, really nice touch, while kind of feeling like she doesn't do the most heavy damage, but because she is so fast and nimble and can do that burn damage, it really, really matches her character. Morgana is super over the top, really fun and cartoony. Transforming into the car is just such a blast, and like just seeing the little things like the animations of like how like the specials work, or even just like how he's running on the ground is so much fun and really nails that character. That's just really because the way Morgana's proportions are at, it's just kind of hard to nail in an action game without it feeling either too realistic or too kind of constrained by the engine. Yusuke, I know everyone has said it, Yusuke is such a blast. He is awesome. He is definitely just a Virgil fanboy, but hey, at heart, aren't we all? It's so fun using all of his ice attacks. His assault rifle is really, really nice without being too overly powered. He's got tons of great charge attacks. He's got tons of great, like, different, basically just DMC moves at this point. And it's just so satisfying using a character like that who is just so heavy, so mash friendly in terms of like their combos, where when you end it, if you just get to like lay into everybody, it's very fun just to mash that triangle button and just see the damage rank up. While also, he's not immediately like fast and like I'm going to cut through everybody and act like butter sort of thing. You have to like ebb and flow through each combat maneuver depending on what the situation is, or else you're just going to kind of get beat up around. Makoto, super, super fun. The fact that you can actually ride around on Johanna is such a great touch. Hand-to-hand combat is really hard to feel good, especially in a game where everyone's got these super long swords or unrealistically crazy hitboxes with knives or axes and bats and stuff like that. So having a hand-to-hand character still feel so well is such a testament of like, they did such a good job of, there's not a ton of playable characters in this game, but each one is so good for so many different reasons. Like, there's no one character who's like, oh god, this character's the worst. Haru, absolute tank. Absolute unit. If she could get more jacked, she would be jacked. She would be the swollest swole boat in Swole Town. Haru is just so fun and so heavy and so slow, but when you are like dealing damage and knocking people back with either your grenade launchers or specials or anything else, she's just so fun and so good for just hammering down and hunkering some awesome damage on people. It is so fun. Next up, we have the next two new characters. I kind of mentioned with Sophie, she's very fast, she's very fun. She uses her yo-yos, which is a really unique weapon. So the fun thing with Sophie is when you're actually attacking with her, if you press buttons at the right moment, you get a bunch of stat buffs increasing as well as your attack range up. So it's really beneficial. The more you understand each character, the more not only fun you're going to have while playing the game, but just the more rewarding the combat system gets. And speaking of a character who's probably like way more overly technical than you would probably think, Zenkichi is awesome. Zenkichi's got this crazy, just like berserk-like longsword, and he's got these two pistols that are really, really good, along with a interesting rage mechanic of, at the sacrifice of his own health, the more damage you do in rage mode also brings your health down slowly, but if you do criticals, every bit of damage you do that is a crit attack or through gun damage is brought back to you. And so it's kind of like playing this juggling game of, okay, I'm going to sacrifice a bunch of health to get back more, possibly with like a chance of getting crit damage or using different skills. And it just leans into the whole like Bloodborne thing of why, God, I love Zenkichi so much. Whether it be in the story or playing him, he is just chef's kiss. So good. Final thing I want to say about the gameplay. I really, really loved how the Showtime attacks were not only so fun, but like they were never something like you were able to spam it a lot. Unless you were using items to refill your Showtime gauge, Showtime attacks always felt special. It was always helpful that there were different skills, whether it be, oh, if you switch to a different character in battle, their Showtime gauge will increase a little bit faster. And even characters like, whether it be Sophie or Yusuke, who can build up their meter really, really fast if you know what you're doing, it never felt unbalanced. And for these attacks that are basically supposed to be just your giant AoE, knock everyone out of the water things, it's just really nice that everyone is great. There's not one that feels like a total whiff. The game's really, really good at making sure that, like, hey, even if you're not looking in the right direction, it's going to fix it for you, because that's definitely been a thing in some Koei Tecmo games, and especially Omega Force games, where you finally get your special meter up, and you're looking at the wall when you press it on accident, and you just whiff all of your damage. So the fact that the game is smart enough to know, hey, if you built this up and you use it, there's no way you're really going to blow it. Like, as long as you have saved it up and you're using it and you want to deal the damage, you got it, buddy. So that's pretty much the most of my thoughts on the gameplay in terms of actually going into jails and battling. Now, this is still a Persona game. There are still some light social sim elements. So, when you're walking around areas, there's basically around like 2 or 3 different areas you can walk in, go to shops, talk to friends, stuff like that. The calendar system is there in the most linear of like surface level ways. You're not having to, like, every day going into a jail is a different day in real life. You can pop in, out. The story progresses when the story wants it to progress. So the calendar system is really just there as kind of window dressing, so don't ever get worried about stuff like that. You can take your time or blaze through everything as much or as little as you want. So when you're in these worlds, you're really only going to be doing a couple handful of things. You're either going to be buying items, fulfilling requests for friends, hanging out with friends, or on the rare occasion, investigating a location, seeing who the bad guy might be, getting intel on specific jail keepers, and whatnot. It's not meant to be something super deep. There's not something like part-time jobs. There's no outside mini-games you're going to be playing. These are just small opportunities for character vignettes of, hey, let's go check out this shrine, let's go look at the statue, eat at this restaurant. These are really just ways of you to kind of get an example of all the cities they're going to. So it's really fun, especially because this game at its heart is a road trip summer vacation game. It's fun getting to finally leave Tokyo and check out places like Okinawa or Osaka and just really kind of breathe in what those worlds are like. And it's so fun just getting just that little sliver, like the frosting of what these areas or these hubs might actually be like in real life. But I just thought it was so fun, and my god, especially in the like current state of how I've been, it's just made me even more itching to go traveling and explore the world even more than it already was. And the fact that if a road trip game makes you want to go on your own vacation and road trip with your friends and family, I think that's like the highest compliment you can give one. Okay, so next up, I want to talk a little bit about performance. So, as I mentioned before, primarily played on PS4 and PS5. It was nothing but like a locked, upscaled 4K, 60 frames per second. Never saw dips. It is super impressive what this engine can do, even while not like always slamming the screen with enemies. It's never meant to just be like a wave of hundreds and hundreds of people, unless it's like very specific battles. But just seeing a Persona game running this well at this high of a fidelity has really spoiled me. Like, now whatever they do next is going to be really, really tough at Atlus. And even looking at upcoming projects like Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remaster, I'm like, that's going to be like 1080p 30, and even though it is an upscaled PS2 game, I'm like, it's going to be weird. It's just going to be one of those things that the more games keep pushing those boundaries, the games that kind of want to root themselves in the past, whether it be for technical reasons or financial ones, it's going to be so hard coming out of it. But for this game, it just super excels. And even running on the Switch, it does a pretty good job of sticking to that 30. The big kind of like factor you're going to get on the PS4 and Switch versions is load times. Load times are long, you're loading into each area, you're loading into different sections of it, and if you don't have a fast hard drive, those load times can definitely add up. When you're going across maps, when you're running through places and not using fast travel, there's moments it might feel slow. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things of the load times are bad, it's the number of loads that kind of add up to make it feel long that might get on some people's nerves. Now obviously for me, that wasn't really an issue, but I do want to point that out there, that if you are a little bit worried of aggressive load times and multiple loads at that, the Switch version is definitely going to be your biggest fear there. PlayStation not so much, PS4 Pro nominally better, PS5 they're basically gone. And obviously your mileage is going to vary a lot on PC. Next thing, while we are talking about presentation, I would be remiss not to talk about the soundtrack. This game's soundtrack is criminally good. And what I mean by criminally good is that it is so good that when I hear people say, oh, it's just Atlus who made it. Like, only Atlus did the soundtrack, so of course it's great. It's like, no, dude, if you look at those credits, it's a very, very large number of people in the sound team at Omega Force, at Koei Tecmo, who really put in the time and effort to make this not only an amazing soundtrack, but to also just kind of be like, almost like a great like send-off, like best of album for like, obviously there's tons of music from Persona 5, there's a lot of stuff kind of reused in there, but also there's a great use of not only remixes, rearrangements, but also new tracks that are just so much fun, so catchy. And when I heard stuff like Counter-Strike for the first time, I'm never going to forget those moments. It's just like every new song I got to in this soundtrack, no matter whether it be my first time or my 10th time hearing it, it was just as catchy and just as much of an earworm as it was the first time I heard it. It was so much fun, such a great soundtrack. Does a great job of making each location also feel different. The boss battling tracks are really, really fun. So yes, if you are a fan of not only good music in general, but if you really, really resonated with the soundtrack of Persona 5 or Persona 5 Royal, this one is easily at the top of my mark in terms of Atlus soundtracks. And again, I cannot give enough praise to everybody who worked on this soundtrack, but like whether it be Lynn for singing the vocals, Lotus Juice for writing a couple of the songs, all the amazing sound team who made this happen with the instruments, the recording. Can't think of a better way to not only bring this game alive musically, but give this such a unique tone. It's not just Persona 5, but a Omega Force game. It is definitely its own beast, and the soundtrack really fits that change of tone. Sadly, while talking about sounds, I can't keep praising this game for that much longer. And this is very specific to the English version, and I'm recording this review in April of 2021. This game has been out since February of 2021. And this is still an issue, and I don't see it changing anytime soon, but if it does, I will gladly update this video and let people know. But Atlus West and all the people involved with the English localization for this game, they really dropped the ball. And what I mean by that is not because of the recording in terms of, oh, how did the people like deliver their lines, how was that? It's all the sound mixing. For whatever reason, and obviously we all knew that this game was recorded at home because of the pandemic and everything that was going on during production of the English version, but that's fine. The thing I don't understand is that there are so many sound mixing issues with certain characters sounding really loud, certain characters sounding really quiet, even when they're all in the same room. So like having a moment of, let's say you're talking to Yusuke and he sounds very, very far away, but you're talking to Makoto next and she sounds right next to your face. It's such a jarring experience, and the fact that it happens through the entirety of the game is such a downer, because like, as I mentioned, I really love this story. I really thought the voice acting was on point for so many characters. I really enjoyed my time with it, except the fact that there were moments in the game, whether it be gameplay or cutscenes, where the audio mixing is so bad that you're either going to just miss what's happening if you're not paying attention, or you'll think the person who was working on this just was asleep at the wheel. And you don't want to have that. Like, obviously, hundreds of people worked endless amounts of hours to make this video game happen, and I would never want to discredit any of that. The problem is, though, there has been no communication with fans of, is this going to be a thing that can change? Because guess what? It's all just editing. There are all of these files out there that like can be torn out, ripped apart, edited again, improved a little bit, and just patched out there. Like, it's not a big deal in terms of, oh, it's going to ruin the experience forever. It just is such a unfortunate stain on this game that primarily I have almost no major problems with. And the fact that this is exclusive to the English version hurts even more, so it's like, yeah, if you don't love the English dub and you just want to do the Japanese dub, well, you're not going to have that problem there. The recording mixing is perfect on that one. Alright, so, complaining aside, I want to start wrapping this up and just sort of give my last minute thoughts and kind of talk about this game in a little bit more on more of a personal level. So, this game has been just such a journey for me, not only in terms of playing it for the first time in Japanese last year, covering the lack of English announcements for it throughout the eventual announcement in December of 2020, and now finally getting my hands on it. It feels really surreal. Like, we're here, this is kind of a personal milestone for me in terms of games I've looked forward to for what doesn't feel like that long, but also doesn't feel like it got enough praise, but It's been really, really humbling for me seeing everyone's reactions now that the game is out in the wild. Whether it's something that you didn't love per se, or it's something that maybe left you wanting more, the fact that I've seen people also say, oh, this is like now my favorite game in the series, or this is how I feel about these new characters. Just seeing these discussions has been such an honor for me to see as someone who's been such a vocal advocate for the game, and I will continue to be even after this review. The fact that I've put all of this time into the game and I know how grindy of a platinum it is, and I am just as excited to get that platinum one day. Obviously, I'm not going to rush into it, but it's such a testament to not only how much I really enjoy my time with this game, I cannot recommend it enough. If you are remotely interested in it, if you enjoy the world of Persona 5, and if you just want to just try something different from Omega Force and really see what a different twist on both companies kind of takes of this universe and this world, I cannot recommend Persona 5 Strikers enough. Full price, go for it. No qualms about it. It is such a great game from beginning to end, and I have never felt more confident recommending a game on this channel in so many years, at least in terms of like recommending it. Like, say what you will about it, love it or hate it, there's always something you can kind of talk about it. And for me, one of the best signs about this game in terms of recommending it to people is you know if you're going to like this game or not, and there's not going to be like a big surprise. Because guess what? If you weren't a fan of the world of Persona 5, you already shouldn't be playing this game. Not saying that you shouldn't try games if you don't want to, but if you are even remotely interested in this world, this setting, this universe, this cast, this is just going to be giving you more of that in the best way possible. The complaints are very minor. I cherished every second I got to play this game, from first playthrough to second, and I'm sure what'll be a third, fourth, and fifth. Persona 5 Strikers, you did such a great job. I'm so glad you exist. I'm so glad you're now one of the best-selling games in the entire series, which is still a crazy, crazy thing to say, but I could not be more happy to hear it. If you have been playing Persona 5 Strikers, let me know what you think. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Where does it rank in terms of your favorite games of all time? Is this your first Omega Force game? Are you going to play other ones? Do you want to know where to start? All these questions, let me know in the comments below. If you would like to, please, please, please let me know what you think. I really appreciate it. If you can also like or subscribe to the channel, that helps so much. The channel's been growing by leaps and bounds more than I ever would have thought even a year ago. So if you are someone who watches and just enjoys my stuff silently, thank you so much. It means the world to me out there. I love being able to help conversations like this start out. So if I can just do my part to get these conversations going more, that is all the motivation I ever need there with it. That being said, though, if you would like to help support not only the channel, but my weekly podcast called Shin Megami Tensei Network, you can go to patreon.com/SMTN, and that is just a way for you to donate any amount you feel you would like to help, not only with the podcast, but just with different aspects in terms of getting recording equipment, upkeep, and server costs, stuff like that. Either way, you can find me on Twitter. I am at Torchwood4SP or at SMT Network on Twitter. All that fun stuff aside, thank you so much for listening to this very long review. Thank you so much for putting up with me advocating for this game for so long. Have a great rest of your day. I will talk to you all later.